In an op-ed for The Guardian, Bernie Sanders shed light on a political issue in this country that just doesn't get enough attention, and that is money in politics. So in this article, he slams the Republican budget and their tax proposal because it is brazenly corrupt. And he talks about how the Republican Party's donors are able to pull the strings in the Republican Party specifically and get them to do what they want and pass policies that are beneficial to them. Bernie Sanders argues the Republican budget, which will likely be debated on the floor of the Senate this week, is the Robin Hood principle in reverse. It takes from those in need and gives to those who are already living in incredible opulence. Donald Trump and Republican leaders claimed their plan would provide a big league tax cut for the middle class. Nothing could be further from the truth. According to the nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, by the end of the decade, nearly 80% of the tax benefits of the Republican plan would go to the top 1%, and 40% would go to the top 1/10%. Meanwhile, while Republicans want to give a $1.9 trillion tax break to the top 1%, they are proposing massive cuts in programs that working-class Americans desperately need. This budget cuts Medicaid by more than $1 trillion over 10 years, which would throw some 15 million Americans off of the health insurance they currently have. Further, this budget does what the Republicans have not yet attempted to do in their previous healthcare legislation, and that is to make a $473 billion cut to Medicare, despite Trump's campaign promises not to cut these programs. Why are the Republicans bringing forth such an absurd budget that in almost every instance is diametrically opposed to what the American people want? The answer isn't complicated. Follow the money. Today, we have a corrupt campaign finance system that enables multi-billionaires, along with some of the most powerful CEOs in America, to contribute many hundreds of millions of dollars to elect Republican candidates to represent their views. As a result, the top 1% has been able to rig the political system to favor them at the expense of virtually everyone else. Here are just a few examples. The Republican budget would give the richest family in America, the Walton family of Walmart, a tax cut of up to $52 billion by repealing the estate tax, a tax that only applies to multimillionaires and billionaires. But if you are a lower income senior citizen, you and over 700,000 other families may not be able to keep your home warm in the winter because of a cut of about $4 billion to the low-income home energy assistance program. At a time when the middle class is shrinking and over 40 million Americans are living in poverty, this budget must be defeated and replaced with a plan that reflects the needs of the working families of our country, not just the wealthy, the powerful, and large campaign contributors. Now, Bernie goes on to lay out other examples as to how this benefits the wealthy, and specifically how Donald Trump benefits from repealing the estate tax. I believe he'd save himself or earn $4 billion. So the way that money in politics controls everything is something that has to be talked about more frequently in this country, because really, when you look at the policy positions that politicians take, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be based on what their donors allow them to. So when you look at Democrats, for example, a lot of them refuse to support Medicare for All because they take campaign contributions from health insurance companies. You see Republicans often pushing for war because they take campaign contributions from defense contractors. And political corruption is such a huge issue in America. There was a 2014 Princeton study by Dr. Gillens and Page that found that the American people aren't represented by politicians. They have a statistically insignificant impact on policy outcomes. So it's the preferences of the elites and special interests who actually has a statistically significant impact on policy outcomes. And when you live in a country like that, you're not living in a democracy any longer. It's an oligarchy. So we've got to take our country back from oligarchy, and I think that we have to start by really tying all of these issues to money in politics, because corruption is a huge issue in this country, and Bernie Sanders is probably the one politician that's actually speaking out about this particular issue and it's saying follow the money. I think that's a really powerful statement for a sitting senator to make, especially the most popular senator in the country.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.